You are completely financially exhausted. You are working longer hours and carrying a heavier cognitive load, yet your bank account is experiencing a severe structural liquidity drain. Look directly at the J.D. Power February 2026 survey data. An overwhelming 65% of Americans explicitly confirm that elevated inflation is systematically eroding their baseline income streams. Pure economic logic dictates that in an environment of unprecedented expense, we should be initiating aggressive financial lockdowns and slashing discretionary spending to the bone. Instead, the latest Personal Consumption Expenditures report from Bloomberg reveals an absolute statistical paradox. Spending on luxury services, dining, and travel is not dropping. It is consistently accelerating by 0.4% every single month. You use accumulated reward points to book what you believe is a free flight to a tropical resort, completely convinced you have outsmarted a rigid macroeconomic system. You have not. You have merely stepped onto a highly calibrated conveyor belt of wealth extraction. Economists categorize this exact behavioral anomaly as vindictive spending. We need to completely strip away the trendy internet terminology of doom spending and look at the brutal behavioral economics operating beneath the surface. This behavior is not self-care. It is not treating yourself to maintain mental health. It is a mathematical pivot caused by systemic macroeconomic exclusion. Look at the empirical data surrounding the traditional milestones of adulthood. No, the Wall Street Journal reports that mortgage rates remain bolted above 6.8%, while housing inventory is entirely paralyzed at peak, historically inaccessible prices. For the vast majority of millennials and Generation X, the foundational metric of the American dream, homeownership, has mathematically flatlined. When human psychology is structurally deprived of a massive culturally mandated goal, the brain does not simply shut down its desire for achievement. It forcibly pivots. It desperately seeks out a synthetic sense of agency. You cannot control the volatile housing market, and you cannot control the inflation of basic groceries, but you can control booking a 4-star hotel or securing a $250 tasting menu on a Friday night. The system is not just waiting for you to fail when it actively subsidizes the dopamine hit of your next escape to ensure your long-term compliance. To understand how deeply your behavior is being engineered, we must analyze the architecture of modern financial interfaces. They do not rely on biometric tracking conspiracies. They rely on the highly weaponized psychology of friction. According to research from the Behavioral Insights team, removing the psychological pain of paying through seamless, one-tap interfaces can increase card values by up to 18% compared to cash transactions. Interface engineers design payment gateways with absolute zero friction, actively bypassing your prefrontal cortex to completely erase the cognitive weight of parting with your capital. Let us break down the cold math of that $0 flight. Your airfare cost 0 points, an apparent victory. But upon arrival, you swipe your card for $2,500 to cover the resort fees, the upgraded dining, and the guided excursions, justifying the expense because the flight itself was supposedly free. Here is exactly where the interface traps you. That $2,500 is now parked on a credit card carrying a 24.9% annual percentage rate. When the statement arrives, the user interface helpfully autofills the pay minimum option, defaulting to a seemingly harmless $75 a month. When you tap that sleek, visually satisfying confirmation button, you are initiating a financially devastating equation. Paying only the minimum means it takes exactly 50 months to clear that specific balance. See, that $0 flight extracts $1,300 in pure compound interest from your future earnings. But the true devastation lies in the opportunity cost. That $1,300 in interest is not just lost cash. If you had aggressively redirected that $75 a month into an index fund yielding an average historic return of 8% over those same 50 months, you would not just save on interest. You would have built a capitalized asset worth over $4,200. You are not just paying for a vacation. You are literally funding the retirement portfolios of banking shareholders using your own structural poverty. That interest payment equates to roughly 40 hours of your most demanding, stressful labor, were handed directly to a financial institution simply because their user experience was smoother than your financial boundaries. It is time to entirely shift our perspective. The trip to Bali did not resolve your burnout. It actively funded the exact mechanism that guarantees you will remain burned out. We must completely redefine what capital represents in the modern economy. Money is not a vehicle for purchasing fleeting, temporary relief. Money is veto power. Every single dollar you surrender to vindictive spending is a dollar you permanently deduct from your future ability to say no. It is your power to say no to a toxic work environment, no to an abusive, micromanaging boss, no to mandatory unpaid overtime. When your checking account is leveraged against upcoming credit card statements, you are negotiating with corporate America from a position of profound weakness. The corporate infrastructure fundamentally benefits from your indulgence in luxury distractions. An employee carrying 24% consumer debt is the absolute easiest employee to extract maximum labor from, precisely because they are operating without a safety net. They literally cannot afford to quit. In this specific macroeconomic system, debt is obedience. Liquid cash is sovereignty. Understanding this math is the first step, but relying on sheer discipline to beat algorithms built by billion-dollar tech conglomerates is a failing strategy. You are pitting your decision fatigue at the end of a grueling 9-hour shift against server farms running advanced behavioral psychology models. You must build impenetrable social firewalls. Enter the strategic concept of loud budgeting. Banks rely heavily on the social shame tax they have been counting on for decades. Historically, when you decline an invitation for an expensive night out or a group trip, you swallow the fear of missing out quietly. You offer a vague, polite excuse about being busy. That ambiguity leaves the door wide open for peer pressure, triggering your amygdala to fear social exclusion. You must close that door permanently by stating the math out loud. When the invitation arrives, you respond clearly. You state that you are aggressively clearing high-yield debt and building a 6-month emergency fortress right now, so you have to pass on the event. By openly vocalizing your financial strategy, you instantly manufacture cognitive resistance. You flip the dynamic, utilizing social pressure as a protective shield rather than a vulnerability. Behavioral economics data indicates that this specific vocal pivot slashes non-essential service spending by up to 15%, purely by neutralizing the internal guilt associated with saying no. It turns a moment of perceived deprivation into a highly visible declaration of financial independence. The exit strategy is not a suggestion. It is a cold biological necessity. If you do not execute the next 3 minutes of this math, the previous 10 minutes were just entertainment. A vague desire to save money is not a strategy. A ruthless timeline is. You need to initiate a debt avalanche. Do not spread your payment capital evenly across multiple accounts just to feel productive. Do not ever accept the default minimum payment. You must mathematically isolate the credit cards, carrying an annual percentage rate above 20%, and hit them with absolute, concentrated aggression. The Federal Reserve dot plot projections confirm that elevated interest rates are the new structural normal for the foreseeable future. Carrying unsecured revolving debt in this specific macroeconomic climate is nothing short of economic self-sabotage. To guarantee this strategy works, you must deploy inverse budgeting. The battle for your cash flow is quite literally won or lost in a matter of minutes. If your payroll deposits at 8 in the morning and your favorite retail applications send their targeted push notifications at 9 in the morning, you are operating within a highly critical 1-hour window. You must set up an automated, uncompromising transfer that pulls 15% of your gross paycheck directly into a high-yield savings account, yielding 5% or more at exactly 5 minutes past 8. You have to physically move the capital before your brain even registers that the deposit has cleared. You actively starve the consumer algorithms by entirely removing your capital from the battlefield. Do not let the macroeconomic pessimism broadcasted on the daily news trick you into surrendering your localized individual power. You might not secure a traditional mortgage this year, and you need to thoroughly understand that this is completely mathematically acceptable. Accumulating cash in a high-yield account is not your final destination. It is your war chest. When you systematically destroy your high-interest debt and transition to aggressively hoarding capital, a structural shift occurs in your life. You stop being the target of systemic wealth extraction, but you must bridge the gap to hard assets. In the next inevitable economic cycle or market correction, this sovereign capital will allow you to purchase equities or real estate at a massive discount. You will buy the very assets liquidated by those who chose the free flight today. You transition your status from paying the system to getting paid by the system, capitalizing on the exact same high-interest environment that is currently crushing the middle class. Do not trade your absolute veto power of the next decade just to rent a fleeting aesthetic for the weekend. The math is undeniably cold, but it is deeply and profoundly empowering once you align your behavior with it. Stop funding their quarterly profits with your peace of mind. What is the one doom purchase you are willing to loudly cancel today to buy back your veto power? Drop a number in the comments representing the exact amount of labor hours you are buying back this month by saying no.